Hi, this is Ken and Michelle Bass.
And you're listening to the Resilient Parenting Podcast.
Once again, Michelle and I traveled to the library not to check out books, but to talk with yet another interesting person for our podcast.
Yes, and we just found them in an aisle.
Yeah.
It was the wildest thing. We're just, hey, what you reading? What you looking at? Hey, you want to talk to us for a little bit? I'm just kidding. That is not what happened.
No, they were in nonfiction.
Definitely. Nonfiction. Oh, yes. We were at the library. Love the library. Definitely a good resource out in our community. And speaking of resources, we have lots of amazing nonprofits in our community around Idaho. And we always feature them when we can on our podcast. So if you haven't looked at all of our other choices for episodes, please go to the Resilient Parenting Podcast website page and you'll see all of them on there. I think we're close to 50, and that's pretty amazing.
I passed 50 a while back.
Yes, you did. So did, well,
Barely,
I did too,
barely.
but yeah. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay.
When you consider the other choices.
You always make me feel so young.
Oh.
You make me feel.
Yeah, baby. Yeah. Okay, we'll stop now.
Oh. Well, I'm very excited for our guest today because I have known you for quite a while. We are joined by Julie Meek, a licensed clinical social worker who played lots of different roles throughout the community, but primarily as a mental health therapist. And we met when we were in undergrad at Boise State University. So we've known each other, well, I mean, we graduated
just a few years ago.
just a few years ago. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've worked in multiple roles and organizations throughout the community. Mm-hmm. My career started in Head Start. I worked for 8 years for Lee Pesky Learning Center. Right now I'm a behavioral health provider with St. Luke's Health System. And, I've worked with kids and families and parents over the course of my entire career. I'm also a parent, and I'm very lucky to be part of a larger community of parents who support each other. So there's kids running in and out of the house all the time.
I love that.
So it's 24/7 as a mental health clinician, but also as just someone coming from the heart who really cares deeply about families and kids in our community.
Well, that sounds exactly like what we like to hear and see in our podcast. So, back in the day. Okay, we won't go back. I was telling Ken on the way here how much I have admired you. And when we were students together, you can just see certain students that you knew were going to go far in this field. And you were one of them. There was something special about you, and there still is. So we're really happy to have you on the show and share some of your knowledge with our listeners. And what we're going to talk about today is very important, very timely, and it doesn't matter who is listening, whether you're a professional or a parent, grandparent, maybe someone who's considering being a parent. This is something I think is a human experience, but we're going to talk today about
self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah. Self-compassion. We said it 3 times.
What, the comedy rule of 3?
So the fairy can enter the room.
Self-compassion.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction and for the invitation to speak with you guys. I admire both of your work very much, and it's just lovely to be here and to talk about such an important topic that's so dear to my heart and my work. Definitely not the first person to talk about this and to think about this, and I can't wait to share a lot of resources for your listeners at the end of this talk.
Well, we love resources here.
Yes.
Okay.
So what is self-compassion?
I was going to ask
we
that. Maybe we should define what that is, because I'm like, what is that exactly?
Yeah, we could talk about it a lot of different ways. Dr. Kristen Neff is one of the leading researchers in the country on self-compassion and its importance for mental health. And she breaks it down into several components. But I think for our talk, we're really talking to parents and people who have a parenting role. Self-compassion is treating yourself the way you hope your kids will treat themselves on their worst day when they grow up.
Okay.
How would you hope that they would think about themselves, talk to themselves? What would you hope they would do for themselves on their worst day? That's exercising self-compassion. And how do we model that out loud and in action for our kids? But how do we actually do that within? How do we do self-compassion? It's different from self-esteem. It's different than this beautiful and a very important idea of self-care. Self-compassion is the energy with which we turn inward and notice and allow our more difficult emotions to be there and parent ourselves from the inside out, to quote Dan Siegel.
Love that.
Yes. And how do we really meet our own inner children with as much nurturing and tenderness that we can?
I haven't heard the term inner child in quite some time, so maybe it's something more people need to know about, I guess.
It reminds me a little bit. I have this practice that I have where I actually have a picture of me as a child. I think I'm about 4, and it's a smiling picture, and I have it in my office. And it is a reminder to me to think, would I speak this way to that child? Would I say these things or these thoughts to this child? And it really is a way to love the child that's in me still.
Exactly. And that's so concrete, and that's something anybody could do. Most of us could do. I love that practice. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So tell us more about self-compassion.
Well, it's not something that comes naturally to all of us. There are multiple reasons for that, and it may be contingent on our cultural background or how we've been socialized to act our gender out. It can come from how we were parented. It can come from, the reasons this can be challenging are multi-layered. And so I don't mean to speak about everybody's experience universally, as if I could do that. So, so these are things that I've just kind of picked up on over the years, listening to other researchers and listening to thousands of patients and clients and their families. And the reason I wanted to talk to you about it today, when you so generously came up to me at a conference, you're like, let's do this podcast episode. And I thought about it for some time. Here's where I needed some self-compassion. What should I talk? I'm not an expert on anything. What do I talk about? What do I deal with every day? What do people really bring to my therapy office? What do parents really bring to my therapy office? They feel like bad parents.
Yeah.
They feel not good enough. This Tara Brach calls it the trance of not enoughness, or the trance of low self-esteem, where we really, really, suffer with this. A lot of us do, and a lot of us don't feel like we can talk about it. I think dads and men especially feel like they can't talk about it. To have these feelings of shame or guilt around not really being able to show up the way we feel like our kids deserve. And again, Dr. Kristen Neff, in her research, she found that a lot of us, when a lot of folks were asked, what's hard about being compassionate toward yourself, a lot of folks responded with, well, I won't be motivated. I won't do a good job. I need to be hard on myself in order to perform well. And she actually theorizes, too, there's a lot of the self-esteem movement in there, that we need to be special, above average, in order to be good enough. There's a lot of pressure on parents these days to be super-duper mega parents, meet all the needs in every category as a nuclear family, without even the support of somebody outside of just themselves and their spouse or another parent.
Well, I could see that, like when you're looking at social media, you always see the very best of people. And so it's like, oh, look at them having fun with their kids, or they're able to do this for their kids, or, I don't know if that plays into it, but I do wonder if some of the things that we're able to see in each other's lives, we get to choose what they see and what they don't see.
I think that must play an enormous role.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
What would be a great example of self-compassion within somebody?
You know, what I'd like to do is actually lead us through a short meditation at the end of this. We may not get to it, and I'll share some meditations at the end of our talk in case we don't get to it. But it's slowing down and noticing that there's a difficult emotion present, and really tuning into the embodied sensations that are associated with that feeling of imposter syndrome or perfectionism or inadequacy. What does
Girl,
that feel like in your body?
I can tell you because I have been feeling it. That anytime you try something new, I'll speak for myself. Anytime I try something new, that imposter syndrome is, and then it's like, who do you think you are? At the same time of feeling you're not good enough, don't take up space, but then you're not enough. And it's like, okay, we'll make up your mind. What are we going to focus on right now? And so that pause
And I
to
think,
notice.
Yes, because I think we often bypass that straight to positive self-talk. And that's not a bad thing. Positive self-talk is very important. But again, it won't actually nurture and nourish what's beneath the surface. And why would we want to do that? Well, we want our kids to do that. Let's pretend, I tell people, pretend your kid is psychic. And the thing they're the most psychic about is how you feel about yourself. Their bodies are constantly downloading from us how to feel about ourselves, especially when we, quote unquote, fail, especially when we make a mistake. That's how they're going to treat themselves, is how we treat ourselves. We would hope that they would slow down, feel that feeling, and activate the most loving and nurturing part of ourselves to show up for that feeling and say something like, oh, it's okay, I see you, I hear, oh, that must be really hard. Tell me more about that. And getting really curious. There was a talk, you guys did an episode with Jane Zink recently on empathy for the self. Y'all talked about compassion. That's the difference between you talked about curiosity.
Yeah.
That's the difference between self-compassion and self-esteem, or even self-care. Curiosity is, oh wow, that feeling must be that's really heavy. I feel that in my gut. I feel it in my heart. My hands are tingling, my head hurts. And just giving space for that. Even saying, of course you're feeling this way. You belong here. Talking directly to the feeling. Again, with Tara Brach, her meditation, RAIN, R-A-I-N, stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. It's a 10-minute meditation. If you have no idea how to do this, because it wasn't modeled for you, or it's absolutely foreign, that's not weird. That's really common. And it's a beautiful practice for learning how to do this. So we can more effectively tune into what our kids need and what our spouses need and what our best friends need. It really is talking to yourself, approaching yourself as if you would a best friend. What if your best friend called you on their worst day? How would you listen to them? How would you talk to them?
With compassion.
With
Absolutely.
patience.
With patience, compassion, with understanding, with wanting to, curiosity. I mean, not wanting to make it better, but just wanting to hold that space for them.
And encouragement.
Yeah.
And the patience, I think, is so enormous.
Absolutely.
Or just trying to think of the right thing to say at the time that's part of my problem when something like that happens. Just trying to think of the right thing to say that wouldn't sound crass or wouldn't sound like I'm not caring or not listening.
And and that's the beauty of it, is you don't have to say anything. Just being present and letting them know that you see and you hear them and that you're there for them. Sometimes that's all you need. Write that down, Ken. Write that down.
That's true. Most people just want to be heard and listened to. And our own inner kids or our own difficult emotions often just need space to be recognized.
I could see that.
What are some other meditations you were talking about?
If you've ever practiced a loving kindness meditation, it often begins with this aspect of starting with, how would you regard someone you love very much? How would you extend your loving compassion and empathy to them? Okay, now do that with someone that you're struggling with in your life. You do this in your imagination, and you notice what comes up for you. And then in the next step in these meditations is typically looking in the mirror in your imagination and offering the same kind of warmth and presence and patience to yourself.
So any loving kindness meditation will give you those 3 components.
So, for full transparency, I just want to circle back to the activity that I do with my picture. When I first started to do this practice, I actually had those feelings come up of negativity. And it was hard for me, and that surprised me. And so that's when I realized that there were some areas of that I needed to work on, and that I didn't have compassion for myself. And so, and it, and I thought I did, but then I realized that there were areas that I didn't.
Right, where it didn't feel safe.
It didn't feel safe. It felt odd. It felt like undeserving. And I was, and I'm looking at this picture and this picture of this little girl who was me, but because it was me, it was harder in that moment. And I love kids, but for some reason, but now I only see love. I only see, her and me, we've been through a lot, and I just love her.
She'd be very proud of you.
And your own kids will pick up on this self-compassion. How? Just by noticing it within you, or should you help them learn how to do this too, or what?
Yes, and doing it out loud can be really helpful. Saying actually out loud, it's okay, I made a mistake. Oh, I was really harsh on myself right now. I'm going to take a breath and realize that I'm a human being, and I'm doing my best today, and that's enough.
Right.
Saying it out loud obviously is helpful, but they'll pick up on it. They'll also pick up on the absence of your self-harshness and the absence of you using criticism to motivate yourself or them, and they'll start to even give it back to you. So, and when I decided this was going to be our topic, I asked my friends and community, like, how has practicing self-kindness helped you as a parent or a caregiver? How has becoming a parent or a caregiver challenged your ability to be self-kind and self-compassionate? And I got some beautiful, amazing answers, and I wish I could quote all of them, but one father emphasized how much he notices his daughters give that narrative back to him. Dad, it's okay. You're just one man. It's all right. And another dear friend mentioned how she realizes, if she's having a hard time, she probably needs what her kids need, which is probably protein and sleep.
Exactly.
and some water and a sense of safety and
maybe
connection.
some movement.
And maybe some movement or some destimulation.
Yeah.
And to really tune into what they need more effectively. And another dear friend mentioned how being more curious about her more difficult emotions and times in her life is allowing her to, really allowing that vulnerability has allowed the mask of perfectionism to melt for her and to show up for her and really realize what her son really needs from her on a deeper level than what we think social media wants us to accomplish as parents. So.
It almost seems like we celebrate when things are going well, and I think to pause and to, when we're recognizing when it's not going so well, or we're feeling maybe some feelings that are uncomfortable, to also celebrate those moments of realization, or like, okay, I feel you, I see you, and that's a part of me as well.
Yes.
That's also me, and also part of my story. So
yes, and every there's no such thing as mistakes, really. They're all opportunities.
Learning opportunities, that's what I say.
It's a process. We're not products, we're a process.
Right.
And each of our relationships is so unique. Parenting gets we don't really read many books on how to be a good daughter, on how to have the best marriage possible. But we definitely read a lot of books on how to be the best parent, how to have the best parent-child relationship possible. And it's so much more nuanced than that. So usually what we need, that's what our kids need, and these things go hand in hand. I want to go a little deeper and say too that this is really challenging, especially if you have a history of attachment disruption, childhood trauma. We often need a lot of help with this, and that is okay. We need community, first of all. We need our best friends. We need our closest family members. Sometimes we need a therapist, someone who's trained in something that is about this, like internal family systems, IFS, or can do some EMDR to really get to those lower levels and those really old programming networks that make this really challenging. And they do for a reason. You'll discover why. You'll discover why your inner kid decided it was a much better idea to be self-critical
Yeah.
than to be self-compassionate.
Right.
It was safer. But anyways,
So
sometimes
much
we
more.
need professional help for that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I will say for me that I did go to a somatic counselor who really did that body work to help get some of that energy. And, you know, it's one thing to talk about, another thing to continue to feel it in your body. And so
Yes.
that was something that I did, and that was very, very helpful for
Yes.
me. So I 100% agree. And you go back to the importance of connection and relationships for
Yes.
healing.
Yes.
And so what are some things that we can teach our children? I know that there's modeling, how we take care of ourselves, but how about how we talk to our kids about their mistakes? Oh, learning opportunities.
I see what you did there. Okay.
I think first slowing down and getting curious about what they might be feeling. And I think you and y'all and Jane's Inc. talked about tell me more. Starting there, and you know that embodies it right there when working with your kids. To say, tell me more. I'm really curious what this is like for you right now. And thanking them for sharing, especially teenagers, thanking them for sharing anything
Right.
at all about their inner experience, even if it's not what you want to hear. And I loved how y'all went into how to respond to that in a way, even if it's really hard information that they're sharing with you. And letting them know you're here for them. You know, I know this hurts. That's why I'm right here for you. Thich Nhat Hanh offers a lot of beautiful mantras for us that we can do for self-compassion and with our kids or our spouses or anyone we care about. You know, to say, I know this hurts. I know this hurts, sweetheart. That's why I'm right here for you. And we can also do it with joy, too.
Yeah, and that brings me back to what you had mentioned earlier, Ken, because I think your feelings about wondering if to say the right thing, I think that there's a lot of people out there that they also feel that way, and so maybe they hesitate to say anything.
Right.
And it really comes down to just providing the space. Like Julie was just talking about, just providing the safe space to be able to be curious and to let them feel what they're feeling, the good, the bad, the ugly, and that it's okay, and that you're there for them. I mean, that just reminded me of that, because that's what you're creating in that moment, and it's almost sacred.
Yes. And what you're talking about is reminding me of the good enough parenting movement. I don't know if you have talked about that in past
we have
episodes.
not.
That'd be a good one.
Okay, writing it down.
Winnicott's good enough parenting theory that repair is so much more important than the absence of rupture. We're not going for a ruptureless attachment. We're going for one that repaired. And we can't actually have something strong in our relationship without there being rupture, so there can be repair. Kind of like a bone heals more strongly, you know, after there's been a break. And I think self-compassion allows us to take accountability more effectively and be more authentic in that accountability. And that models it for our kids, so they can then do it back to us, which, you know, I've seen, which friends have seen. Kids actually saying, I could have done that better. I'm sorry. You know, I didn't mean this. This was because I was hungry or I needed a nap.
Yeah.
And yeah, that just making space for that repair, I'd say, is really important for us to emphasize.
I know in like show notes we'll have like some links and things set up for
Absolutely.
you. Maybe some more studying to find out. The one thing I'm still trying to wrap my head around is the difference between self-compassion and
Self-esteem?
self-esteem.
Yeah.
Because they're closely intertwined, right?
They are, and self-esteem is contingent on our performance usually, and standing out, and our strengths. And what Dr. Neff says is the moment that self-compassion or self-esteem abandons us, self-compassion comes in. It's right when, you know, we've lost the job, or we yelled at our kids, or we're late, or, you know, something like this. That's when self-esteem tends to fly out the window, no matter how long we've been working on it. And
Dang
we
it.
need self-compassion to really show up and allow us to recognize our full humanity, and that this is just
It's
just
okay.
part of it. Yes.
Sometimes this happens.
Yes.
Yeah. So be kind to yourself.
Okay.
So what, you know, I can already see listeners like going, I want this for myself. So what is something they can do right now? Something today?
Well, you can check out any of those meditations and think of it as a practice, or like the way you'd want to learn a new musical instrument or a sport. It's a daily practice, not only when we're having a hard time, but especially just as a regular practice on the daily.
Kind of like you using Duolingo.
Oh, yes.
I don't know an app for that. Actually, there's probably several apps for self-compassion.
I would say then, if we're talking to you, brought up Duolingo, to be compassionate about your self-compassion learning.
Exactly. I know we're getting short on time, but I wanted to bring up like neurodivergence. I wanted to bring up,
please do,
moments where we feel we're messy or late or just not enough, or we've been given a lot of feedback as kids in school systems, in workplaces, that we're not quite making the cut, right? And that probably we have neurodivergent children if we have neurodivergence ourselves, and that I would hope that we could learn to practice it right in front of them, that we're beautiful the way we are, and all of our flaws and imperfections and quirks make us unique and amazing, and that this is just part of it, to learn to laugh about it a little bit.
I love that.
So what can we do right now? We can scan our bodies right now with our imagination, our inner eye.
Keep your eyes open if you're driving.
Please don't close your eyes if you're driving. And if this feels safe for you, and you don't have to do it. But see if you can just notice on a scale of 0 to 10, how much tension or anxiety is in your body right now. 10 is the most. And then notice where it is. And then turn toward it like you would your bestie who just called you having a really rough day, and allow it to be there. And see if you can direct your next breath to that space in your body. And if that felt okay, do it again. And something simple, a phrase like, "It's okay, of course you're here, and I'm here with you." That was 10, 15 seconds. You can do that at the stoplight. You can do that when you're waiting in line at the grocery store.
That was amazing when you said that, and then invite your best friend or bestie to come in, and it felt like a big hug into that space. Yeah, that was. I love that. I hope everyone tried that and will do that again and again and again.
But maybe not at the stoplight, shutting your eyes like you did. 'Cause when the light changes.
I told everyone in the beginning to not shut their eyes if they're driving.
Oh, okay.
It's very clear.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but
sorry.
I am not driving,
Okay.
so I took full advantage of this moment.
Okay.
I noticed your eyes were open, though, but no judgment.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm just teasing. So what would you like to leave on?
I'd love to leave on something my friend reminded me of when I was asking everyone for advice on this talk, which is there's at least 4 million ways to do this right. Parenting and parenting ourselves. It's not a 3-point checklist. It's not a light switch. This is something that can be done a million amazing ways, and we're all doing it right. And everyone's doing their best, and that is enough. And I'm really grateful that you had me for this talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by the Idaho Children's Trust Fund.